we got another guest keeping things going here. Good friend of mine. He is the host of the podcast Fullcourt On Flatbush. You also see him on SI.com. It's my man, Robin Lundberg. Robin, what's up, bro?
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. How everything's good with you? Family's good? Everybody's good?
Yeah, man. I mean, everybody's healthy. All the kids are good. They trick-or-treating. It was a busy day. You know, it's a busy family day whenever you're trick-or-treating.
Yes, I know that. I was pretty busy yesterday with my daughter. All she could talk about was going out to get candy. But it's been a very eventful, Robin, start of the season for the Brooklyn Nets, a team you talk about a lot on your podcast, Fullcourt On Flatbush. They got off to sort of a slow start. They had a lot of people wondering what's going on with the Nets. So what was up with the Nets with their slow start to the season?
Well, I mean, I think the number one thing is James Harden wasn't himself at the very beginning of the season, right? So when you have a team that is built around three superstars and you remove one superstar in Kyrie Irving, that leaves you with two superstars, if my math is correct. And then if one of those two superstars is not playing at a superstar level, there is only one superstar remaining, and the rest of the roster isn't built to withstand that. So I think Harden needed to get his legs under him a little bit. You know, he wasn't quite in game shape when things started. The hammy, he had the hamstring pull and then came back and then pulled it again. So he really wasn't able to work out for much of the offseason. And a lot of people wanted to make it about the foul changes and all that. I don't really think it was that. I think it was much more, and he's still working his way back on that burst. But without Kyrie, Harden needed to be a scorer again. And now that he's starting to find that, I think, the Nets will start to find their identity. But they go from, super team with Kyrie to just one of the, contending teams without Kyrie. But as long as Durant and Harden are playing at the level that they're both capable of, they should be fine. They've started to get some contributions elsewhere too. LaMarcus Aldridge has been really big. Consistent scorer for them recently with that mid-range game that just doesn't seem to age. So they're playing a lot better since Harden started playing better.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. Last two games, they've beaten the Pacers, and then we saw them beat the Pistons last night. They've looked stronger and bouncing back in these back-to-back games. You talked a lot about the stars being back, but last game against the Pistons, we saw other guys getting involved. Blake Griffin, who hasn't shot the ball that well this season. We saw DeAndre Bembry shoot the ball pretty well. How important is, and Joe Harris obviously as well too, how important is it in these ability for them to bounce back with these back-to-back wins for guys like these role players to get more involved to help the two superstars? That's got to be important, right, Robin?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's important for any team, right? But I think that goes back to Harden a little bit, because the better Harden plays, the easier it's going to be for those guys, because he's going to be in the lane, he's going to be setting them up. He's really the distributor, the cog, in the engine, if you will, as far as that goes. But yeah, you need guys to knock down shots. I mean, but you're taking 27 points off the whatever Kyrie averaged off the table. So you're going to have to make up for that. Aldridge has given them consistent scoring. Patty Mills is a guy who can score, create a little bit more than a typical role player. But Joe Harris got to make threes. I mean, that's what he's paid to do. If he doesn't make threes, there's a problem. And then those other guys, shooting comes and goes a little bit. You see it over the course of the season, but they have good shooters on the squad across the board. So you would expect those numbers to rise up from where they were at the beginning of the season, just to, the law of averages.
James Harden, when we talk about him turning the corner, we heard last week, he said, his confidence wasn't there. And that was a little bit shocking to me, Robin, in terms of that. He said his confidence wasn't there. But when you think about it, he really wasn't able to put in the work through the offseason because of the hamstring injury. Now you see him getting it back. Are you seeing more of that explosiveness through the last two games? His ability to get to the line more because he's getting to the paint. He's being able to blow by guys. Are we starting to see that come back? Do you think as we see that, his confidence increases even more?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a confidence thing, too. As good a player as James Harden is, he even admitted there was a confidence thing. And I think that goes for every sport. But, when you have a hamstring injury, it's an acceleration thing. You can't really, that quick burst is gone, especially when he played hurt last year in the playoffs. And then you're probably a little afraid every time you do it because he's a guy who hasn't had those sort of injuries. So I think you're seeing it little by little. He's looked a lot better the last couple games. And I still think, having watched his career, he's going to, it was always silly people saying he's washed or whatever, because he played great for the Nets last year. And that wasn't based on free throws, right? He didn't play great for the Nets because of free throws. So what's more likely? the injury set him back or he became old overnight. Maybe he's not where he was in his absolute athletic prime, but I expect to see that burst continue to get better, but it already has gotten better. And yeah, that's one of the reasons you're seeing him get more foul calls because he's getting got by guys. So it's less of him like trying to sell a call as more as it is they're trying to catch up to him. And, it also allows him to collapse the defense a little bit, which makes everybody else better.
You talked about the team being down to 2 superstars right now, Robin, and the Kyrie situation with him not being vaccinated, being away from the team, that's going to loom over this team as long as it lasts. When you look at this team right now and the way they've started, and now 4-3, how much does this team actually miss Kyrie Irving?
Look, I mean, any team that loses Kyrie Irving is going to miss him in the sense that that guy's one of the most brilliant basketball players I've ever seen in my life. I mean, maybe the most skilled player who ever lived. When you factor in ball handling, shooting, finishing, footwork, move set, I mean, there aren't many players more brilliant than Kyrie. And when going gets tough, Kyrie can get a bucket at any time. He can also pick up the pace of a team at any time. So, if Kyrie's on this roster, you're looking at possibly one of the greatest teams in NBA history. That's where they could be. So anytime you remove Kyrie, you miss Kyrie. At the same time, they're fortunate. And the Harden trade was, in a sense, Kyrie insurance too, because not only did they add a player like Harden, but they protected themselves in the event that Kyrie went AWOL or whatever might happen with Kyrie, because he hasn't proven to be a reliable teammate a lot of the time. So I think they miss him, but they're the kind of team that can miss him and still be championship contenders. Because I think if you look at the landscape of the NBA, there's no juggernaut right now. And the Nets are still at the top of the list, I believe, maybe with a tweak here or there, but still at the top of the list of teams that you think could compete for and maybe win the championship. And that's even without Kyrie.
Well, that brings me to my next question, Robin, because I was going to ask you, the Nets being 4-3, I still think a lot of people would have them as favorites to win the title. But when you look at the East, we're not even going to go to the West, but when you look at the East, who do you see as their competition? Is it Milwaukee? They've struggled with some injuries and some depth issues thus far. Who do you see challenging Nets? Is it Miami? Who do you see as a true challenge to the Brooklyn Nets?
Well, I think the East has gotten so much better. I mean, it's almost caught up with the West, if not surpassed the West. I mean, it's deep. Right now, I mean, Milwaukee's the defending champs, so they get the first credit. Miami looks really good, especially defensively. Jimmy Butler has had a great start to the year. And then beyond those two teams, who I would put up there with Brooklyn, I think you have to look at just how deep the East has got. The Knicks are playing really well. And, I don't know if they have that guy in tight situations that they can necessarily rely on, but that's a deep, very good team. The Hawks, obviously, were on the come up last year. They're still there. The Bulls are on the come up this year. I'm probably, the Celtics are still the team that they've been the last several years. I'm probably missing a team or two too, just neglecting to mention. But I would start with Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Miami.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So with all that being said, and even if you look out in the West, you still feel like this is the team to beat. Is there anybody, barring injuries and health situations, and even with a Kyrie out, you still think this is the team that can win the NBA championship this year, correct?
Well, there's a difference between the team to beat and a team that can win the NBA championship. I think when they had Kyrie, they're the team to beat, and there's no questions asked. Now they're one of the teams that can realistically win the NBA championship. Whether you want to make them number one, number two, number three, number four, whatever the case may be, they're not unbeatable. So I don't think they're prohibitive favorites in that sense. But I do think, yes, anytime you're starting, your foundation is Kevin Durant and James Harden, you're in good shape. And that puts the Nets as one of the favorites to win the NBA championship. If I look at the odds, they might still be the betting favorite. I don't know, but they're right up there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they got to be. All right, we got to talk a little hip hop before we get you up out of here. We saw our guy. I know both you and I, we're big Jay-Z fans. Jay-Z gets inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the other day. What did that mean to you as a Jay-Z fan to see this happen? I know I've talked to you about this on my podcast many times. So as a Jay-Z fan, what did it mean for you to see this happen?
That's really cool. I mean, it is. Look, I've always referred to Jay-Z as my motivational speaker, not in the material sense. I don't, watch his cars, investment portfolios, none of that stuff. But that aspirational nature of his music of I'm going to set my mind to it and I'm going to accomplish it. And, that, means something to me. And then just, as somebody who's been a fan for as long as I've been a fan, to see everything I've thought sort of validated in the zeitgeist of not just like hip hop culture, but now, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, that, he's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I believe the first rapper, if not the only rapper in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I think he just became the first solo living hip hop act to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it just shows you like, all right, you're now like hip hop is the most popular genre of music there is, and it's been around a long time. And he made a mention of it in his speech that he was once told it's a fad. Clearly, that's not the case, and he's helped to push that forward. But now, hip hop is having, for the first time, it's aged long enough where there are now the legends, and Jay-Z is the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, whatever example you want to bring up, he is, hip hop in a lot of ways.
How excited for you? I know you always are, so I don't even know why I'm asking, but how excited are you for another Jay-Z album? I see you got the 444 album right behind you. How excited are you for another Jay-Z album to come out?
It feels like the right time. I mean, 444 was, I would have been good off that for a long time. It was fitting and all that, but I don't know. It just feels like the right time. He's been doing a lot of features too, right? Like he did this stuff for the Harder They Fall soundtrack, the Kanye joint, Drake, Khaled, I think Nipsey, right? Like he's active enough where it makes me think something might be coming, and it just feels right. I want him to title it Hall of Fame Hove. It's a good album title, and it feels like, I don't know. I feel like it's imminent. We're gonna find out soon, but it does. You're bringing it up for a reason, right? Because we feel like it's time.
Yeah, we feel like it's time. I definitely feel like it's time. I got to ask you, because we had Rod Boone on here before, and you know that the league announced the City Edition jerseys today. Did you get a chance to see the Nets City Edition jersey, and what did you think of that one?
I think they've done. I mean, like the Nets have done an awesome job with their apparel. I think everything they put out is kind of flames. I've got. I don't know if it was technically the city. I've got the throwback one from last year. The blue that went back to the New Jersey Nets era. This is sort of that too, but the darker shade. They're starting to like tap into the jersey aspect of it. Like when they went to Brooklyn, the black and white was cool because it matches everything. It obviously went with the vibe, the aura of that. Now they're starting to tap into the roots a little bit, give it a little flavor as a secondary option. So when it comes to the aesthetics, I think the Nets have always kind of nailed it.
Yeah, I think they have. I really like these. I like the darker look for them with this sort of throwback feel right there. So I definitely like it. Robin, thank you for joining the show, man. I always love your work. You can check Robin out, sportsillustrated.com. Also, the podcast, which is a great name. I've always meant to tell you that. Fullcourt On Flatbush. That's a great name for the Nets. Everything on the Nets, check out Robin Lundberg for sure. Robin, be well, man. Thank you for joining me on the NBA Exchange.
You got it, man. Take it easy.